The war on Gaza has now reached day 171. Every single day here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we're going to cover the war on Gaza. We're going to cover all the information, all the stories. We're going to give you everything that you need to be able to understand what's happening. We're going to cover what corporate media refuses to cover. We're going to give you the information that mainstream outlets refuse to acknowledge. We're going to give you the dates. We're going to give you the data. We're going to give you the perspective. We're going to give you the developments. We're going to give you everything that you need to make sense of it, because this is a crazy situation. As I always say, this is not a war with Gaza. It's not a war in Gaza. This is a war on Gaza. And I start this information by talking first about the raw numbers. I want to start by talking about the raw numbers. At least 32,333 Palestinians have now been killed. 32,333 Palestinians have been killed, and 74,694 have been wounded since October 7th in Gaza. The revised death toll in Israel from Hamas's October 7th attack stands at 1,139, with dozens remaining remaining kidnapped. With that information in mind, I want to tell you some of the other information that's come up, because it speaks to why the numbers are growing so consistently, if not exponentially, in the last week. Israel acknowledged on Sunday that it killed dozens of fighters and arrested 450 people in the week-old operation in and around Shifa Hospital, which is in Gaza City, adding that it located military equipment and infrastructure in the area. Now, this has been something Israel's been saying for months now, that Shifa Hospital, which is the principal hospital in Gaza, the primary hospital inside of the Gaza Strip, that has at times 30,000 people in it, right? I mean, in terms of workers, hospital folk, doctors, medical transports, as well as actual patients. And they've once again waged a kind of battle in and near Shifa Hospital. And the argument has always been that it's not really a hospital, that it's a military target, that it's a military headquarters, that it's a base for Hamas. Well, I don't know if it is or it isn't, but the evidence that they presented certainly hasn't made it seem like it is. The case that they've made has been weak. The evidence that they've presented, one time it was a couple weapons and a box of dates, and they said, oh, this is definitely a command center. I mean, come on. And even if it were a place where there were Hamas operatives or Hamas fighters, that doesn't mean that that the hospital necessarily loses its protected status. In fact, it doesn't lose its protected status unless they can meet a pretty high burden of proof, which Israel has never met or really tried to meet in terms of presenting it to the global community. They just keep saying, believe us, believe us, believe us. The Israeli military has now claimed that Hamas fighters have barricaded themselves inside of Shifa Hospital and are throwing explosives from inside the maternity ward and the emergency room. Again, organizations have attempted to independently verify these claims. I work at Al Jazeera. I know for a fact Al Jazeera has attempted to prove this information factual or unfactual, and so far they haven't been able to verify the Israeli claims. Now, the claims haven't been disproven, but how do you disprove something? How do you disprove that Hamas is in the maternity ward throwing hand grenades or dropping bombs, right? You have to prove that they're there. And I can tell you, as somebody who has spoken to doctors in Shifa Hospital, I've spoken to people. In fact, you can see right on the channel my interview with Abdul Wahab Abu Warda. He's never seen any indications of this. I've spoken to European doctors as well who've never seen any indication of this. Show me to the people who have seen an indication of this. That's all I'm saying. But Palestinians who fled the continuing Israeli siege of the hospital say that Israeli tanks and armored bulldozers drove over at least 4 bodies and ambulances. I'm going to say that again. They say that Israeli tanks and armored bulldozers drove over at least 4 bodies and ambulances. Now, I don't know if those bodies were already dead or not. Either way, it's shameful. Driving over ambulances is never okay. Driving over medical support vehicles is disgusting. During the week, Israel extended its attacks on medical complexes to El Amal and Nasser hospitals in Khan Yunis. Let me say that again because I don't want that to go over your head. It's not just Al Shifa that's been attacked. Um, the El Amal Hospital and Al Nasser Hospital, which is in Khan Yunis, has also been under attack. This isn't the first time that Nasser has been under attack. About 6 weeks ago, Nasser was under intense attack by Israeli forces as well. Um, it's impossible under these circumstances for sick people to get in. It's impossible for people who are well to get out. It's impossible for people to get anywhere near the hospital, which just creates another intensifying factor to what has become a genocide. People can't get help. They can't get safety. They can't get medical treatment. The doctors are telling me that they're literally leaving the hospital and treating people on the ground because it's all they have. Palestinians have accused Israel of repeatedly targeting hospitals over the last, what's now almost 6 months of bombardment. The UN Health Agency was forced to end its mission at El Shifa Hospital, in fact, because of the attack. So not only are the patients experiencing the conditions I just described, uh, but the outside international health agencies can't stay. I mean, how can you stay in a hospital where it's getting bombed? Separately, the Palestinian Red Crescent said on Sunday that one of its staff members and a displaced person have been killed in El Amal because of heavy bombardment and gunfire. So we're seeing it all over the place. Khan Yunis residents said on Sunday that troops also advanced and formed a cordon around Nasser Hospital under cover of heavy air and gunfire. And lastly, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees says Israel will no longer allow its food convoys to enter northern Gaza where people are dying of hunger. I don't want to understate that. In fact, let me say that one more time. The UN Agency for Refugees, UNRWA, is saying that Israel will no longer allow food convoys to enter northern Gaza. We've talked about the violence, we've talked about the bullets, we've talked about the start, all the things that are going on in the south. But in the north, people are starving. People are literally dying of hunger. Babies are dying of hunger. Adults are eating animal feed to survive, and they're dying, or they're getting sick and dying. They're either dying of starvation or dying and getting sick. They're dying of malnutrition. They're dying of dehydration. Remember, Israel's also destroyed more than 100 wells. I believe there was 112. And yet Israel's still talking about doubling down. They're talking about entering Rafah. In fact, even the Biden administration, which has been fairly lockstep with Israel, has stood up now and said, hey, wait a minute. You can't invade Rafah, which is still at the top of Israel's strategic tactical list, according to Israel itself. That's what Netanyahu said. And but Vice President Kamala Harris said that it would be a huge mistake for Israel to move into Rafah without any type of major military operation. We're talking about a military operation. Let me tell you what she said. She said, we have been clear in multiple conversations and in every way that any major military operation in Rafah would be a huge mistake. She's saying you can't go into Rafah. But are they still going to go into Rafah? Of course they are.